everyone. My name is Olha, and I'm an Education USA Ukraine advisor. Um, I'm extremely happy to say that our session on everything you need to know about writing and now studying essay and studying of purpose started. And I am happy to give the floor to our university representatives to present themselves.
Well, I guess I can go first. Hi everyone, my name is Lorenzo Wilcox, International Missions Counselor at the University of Oregon, located in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And Aaron, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Erin Vogt. I'm with George Washington University, and I work specifically in the School of Engineering and Applied Science. And I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Philip Bailey. I'm the Associate Vice President for Global Learning and Engagement. That's a long phrase for head of the office that takes care of international students and promotes study abroad at the University of Central Arkansas. And a long time French professor.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I would like to ask you whether you would like to say a couple of questions, to say some information before we jump into Q&A session.
Sure, I can do that. Specifically about the statement of purpose and what we're doing here today. Is that the?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Happy to. So I think we can all bring some different perspectives from our different universities about what students can think about and prepare for when they're preparing their statement of purpose. I think the statements that you'll want to write can be very different for undergraduate studies, for graduate studies, maybe if you're in the arts, if you're in the sciences. And some universities even provide prompts for the statement of purpose. Some universities just invite you to submit what you think is best. So there can be a lot of differences depending on your goals and the university that you're applying to. But we can each provide a little bit of perspective from our institutions, and we're happy to answer whatever questions that you might have. I think maybe the most important factor is just that the statement is really the best place in the application process to introduce yourself and for the university to get to know you as a person, as an individual, and your academic interests and professional interests. So that's my starting point, and we're happy to talk with you more about whatever questions you might have.
Thanks, Erin. Lorenzo, Philip?
No, just to echo what Aaron's saying, but also just saying, yes, it can be quite daunting, I guess, to embark on the application essay or think about the personal statement and what to write. There's a lot of guidelines out there to help you, brainstorm, to help you get those ideas going, and for you to really build and craft, a well-developed essay. I would say the most important thing, maybe it might become a theme as we go through this session, but I think if you start with it by thinking, just be authentic and be yourself. I think that is the main point of this component of an application, is to really share your story. So in a way, it shouldn't be too difficult to talk about yourself because really you're the expert on that material. But I will definitely be happy to help you with some tips and guidelines for how to navigate this particular component of the application.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Thanks.
And I would just add that although we're here talking about admissions essays, many universities like the University of Central Arkansas don't require an essay for admission at all. But we do have an essay requirement for scholarship applications. And as it turns out, the sort of personal story that you need to tell is more or less the same for both. However, my best advice is to try and be, as Lorenzo said, as authentic as possible, and try and be very specific about what you want to do and why, so that a student who says, I want to go to the University of Central Arkansas because I want to study in the United States, well, that's not a great start. And if you say that to a visa officer at an embassy, you probably won't get a visa. But if you do the research on the academic program that you want to do, And I've got so many students who, they in their spare time, or free time, they work with their community, they do service, and they talk about they've done that service, they've helped people in their home country. They want to get more expertise at university in America and use that expertise to be more effective in the service. We can't all tell the same story, but to the extent that you can be detailed, and I can give you more details if you want to ask questions about uh, crafting an essay and how to frame it. But tapping into your own personal history, being honest, and in some cases, you got to take some risks to stand out. If you make the safe statement, you'll sound like all the other marketing majors or psychology majors, and you won't get admitted because you didn't make yourself any different than all the other excellent students that are applying to a good university like George Washington or University of Oregon that require essays. All right.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we already have lots of questions from our audience, like a lot of. So I would like to start with the first one, and I highly encourage you to join and to add to each other your experience. So the first one, do I have to write different statement of purpose for different universities, even if I seek same degrees in all of them? Also, do I have to get different recommendations for each of them? So I will double the first one. Do I have to write different statement of purposes for different universities?
I would say yes, yes, yes. Because I have a daughter who applied to different universities, very bright young woman. She graduated from Johns Hopkins University. She only would apply to universities that were that competitive, which scared me a lot. All right. But we happened to visit Baltimore to visit that campus. And when she wrote her essay, she was able to talk about that visit and be very, very specific about the biomedical engineering program. She couldn't say that about other universities. And so I read all her essays. By far the best one was the one that it was authentic. And so, yeah, you need to write a different statement of purpose because you need to address the application towards the university that you're going to. And if you don't show that you've done research, I think I've heard that the University of Michigan gets 60,000 applications a year, and they don't admit but 8, 9, 10,000 people, right? So you've got to make sure that you're tailoring your message to the university where you're going. You guys can add on that if you want.
No, I mean, I think that's definitely a great point. I was just going to add, one of the things that I've seen in essays when students are applying to multiple universities is they might forget to change the name of the university that they're sending their essay to. So always double check that stuff, of course. But no, I agree with Philip. With regards to the letters of recommendation, I don't think that would need to be. I mean, maybe different. It really depends on what particular programs or what the purpose of the recommendation might be. But I think for the most part, your recommendation should probably be the same regardless of where you would go, because they're talking about your character, your who you are as a person, maybe what you've accomplished in a general sense, and that could really apply to all the institutions that you're looking at. But yeah.
Yeah, now I would just add regarding writing a different statement for each university. I can see this from two perspectives. From the university perspective, yes, of course, we want our own unique statement from you, talking about how you fit in with our university and what you like about our university and those sorts of things. From a student perspective, if I'm a student and I'm applying to 8 or 10 universities, I don't know if I have the creativity to write 8 or 10 completely different statement of purposes, but I will say, at least you can have a framework for yourself, the type of story that you want to tell, the type of motivation and interest that you want to talk about, and you can tailor that framework to each university that you're applying for. So you can talk a little bit about that specific university's location and opportunities and faculty members, while still telling some similar stories in your statement. So I think the key is to tailor and customize the stories that you're telling and your statement for the university that you're applying for. And that's the best way to be successful when we read statements of purpose, and we do read all of your statements. We want to see that you know the university that you're applying to.
Okay, thank you. And now I want us to get closer to the question about also, do I have to get different recommendations for each of them? So what about that?
Yeah, I mean, if the student is asking about different recommenders, no, I mean, I think when I myself applied to graduate programs, I think I had the same 2 or 3 people recommend me to the different graduate programs that I apply for. The recommendation letter that person submits is up to them. You won't know probably if it's different for each university or not, but I would say typically your recommenders are probably writing a pretty standard letter. As Lorenzo mentioned before, they're probably telling the same thing about your motivation and your capabilities to be a good student for this university. So I don't think you have to get different recommenders, but you should be sure to make your recommenders aware of where you're applying to and the different types of program that you're applying to, so they can respond accordingly.
If I could just add one thing about recommenders, oftentimes when I see letters of recommendation for students, it's obvious that the student has asked the most important person they know to recommend them, the head of the school, the governor of the province. And if you ask someone who doesn't know you well to recommend you, they will write a very short, vague statement and say that you're the most honest and hardworking person they've ever met. And you will not stand out. So you're much better to invite a teacher who saw you in class, even if they saw you struggle. If you worked hard and succeeded after initially having trouble, that's a great story for the recommender to tell. But don't fall into the trap of looking for the most prestigious person to recommend. Choose someone, preferably a teacher or school counselor who knows you well.
Okay, thank you. Now we have another question, and it's about the word limit in the essay. So from Diana, how many words students will need to put into personal statements?
I think for the most part, I mean, there are some limits in the Common App or using some platforms. Usually it's about 650 words, translates into page and a half if you want to think about it that way. But really, I was thinking too, we have we have essays for other purposes, such as scholarships, like I think Philip was mentioning, that might have 250 word limit, like very short, very limited space where you have to think about what you want to write about, but really think about writing it in a concise and brief way, but still in a way that you're saying everything you want to say. There's other essays for the honors college or different things, programs like that might have 500 word limit. It might depend on the purpose of the essay, but I think that the key is to make a good outline based on the prompt that you want to use, based on the idea that you want to formulate, and then knowing the space that you have, just recognizing what to take out or maybe how to change what you want to say and make it a little more concise and brief, but still get to say it.
Okay, and also we have another question from Mary. She says that I'm interested what kind of essays are required for each university is represented.
Well, maybe I'll start because we don't require an essay at all right? However, basically, if you meet our application requirements, we'll admit you, all right? Public regional university in the Mid-South. But for the scholarship, if you meet the eligibility requirement of having the right grade point average, right, and the right English proficiency, then everything is based on the essay. And most recommendations maybe a little bit, but that essay is how we choose the scholarship winner.
Thank you, Philip. Okay.
Yeah,
Anything from yours? Yeah. Ernst.
Yeah, for us, we require the statement of purpose, 1 to 2 page statement of purpose. For the program that I work in, the graduate engineering programs, and that is an open statement. So we don't give you a specific prompt that you must answer for that statement, but it's just your opportunity to tell us about why you're interested in this program and your motivation for joining this program. One thing I'll say, this is sort of a combination of this question and the last question, but you have to really read carefully the instructions for each university and even each program that you're applying to, because for George Washington University, as an example, I work in the engineering school. The business school might have a different policy about their statements that they require. The undergraduate programs might have a different policy about their statements. So you have to really look at the instructions for each application process to make sure that you're meeting the requirement for that program.
Yeah, just to close it out, for us, we do have the classic personal statement essay. We do provide some prompts to help you navigate that particular component. And then again, if you want to apply for our honors college or other programs like that, you would have specific prompts that you would need to address in your personal statement. So it really will depend on the program, but we do have a couple of them that we require as part of our application process.
Thanks. And also the question related to from Lilia, is that beneficial to add some personal detail about family, hobby, interest?
I think it can be beneficial. I think it just shouldn't be the main point of your statement. So I think if you add a little bit of context, and this answer might vary for each of the universities here, but if you add a little bit of context about yourself and your personal situation to help us get to know you and feel sort of connected to you as a student, I think that's fine. Maybe it's in your introductory statements or paragraph or something, but you want to spend the majority of the time focusing on your interest as a graduate, as a student, as an undergraduate student or a graduate student, why you're interested in joining this university, what are your goals, what do you hope to achieve during your studies and after your studies. You don't want to spend sort of the majority of your time just talking about your personal situation in most cases.
Okay, thank you. And also the question here is, how is it better to explain in personal statements students' radical change of study field, very different from bachelor's?
Yeah, am I the only graduate program, or are we all representing graduate studies?
I do both, but
okay. Yeah, I can just say for myself, I mean, it's not so common in my field because I work with engineering. So most students do come with an engineering background, but we do invite students from other backgrounds to apply to some of our programs. And in that case, I think you just really talk about how you have, I think one of the key questions is going to be, how have you tested out this area of study? So if you're going to pursue a graduate program, that's a serious endeavor. It's going to be a lot of hard work. And so how do we know that you're really interested in that area of study? So you can explain this in your statement of purpose. You can also have some information maybe in your resume or CV about some internship that you've done or some extra courses, some MOOCs or extra learning opportunities that you've taken advantage of, even if they're not for credit. Maybe that helps us understand that you've explored this area a lot. And you feel confident that this is the path that you want to take.
Lorenzo, I could add something if unless you want to add something first.
Go for it, Phil.
Well, for a big change from undergrad to graduate work, you do have to explain why. But there are a lot of graduate programs that don't care what major you did as undergrad. Our occupational therapy PhD or doctorate program takes every major. The business program, you might think, I have to study business as an undergrad. No, you don't. Our MBA program, as long as you do micro and macroeconomics and a couple other prereqs, there's any major for that will work. Same thing for law degrees. You can major in a lot of things in the United States and go on to do a law degree, because that's graduate work in the States, but it's not in other countries, I guess. But anyway, you have to explain it, but it's not uncommon to change fields as you learn more about yourself and figure out what you want to do in life.
Yeah, that actually makes me think to really take advantage of using that opportunity to talk about how you stand out as a student. If you're coming from a unique background, if you're coming from a degree in biomedical engineering and now you want to join the law program, you could really have a lot to contribute in terms of medical developments and research and other things that maybe you want to do in your legal career. So really use the opportunity, aside from just explaining why you want to change, to how this makes you a unique candidate for the program.
Okay, and we have another question about graduate essay here. So what should we not do in the personal statement for graduate school? So some don't tips here.
Going back to putting the wrong name of the university in the essay, I would say, and this is only if you feel comfortable, but it's always good to run it by someone else that maybe you trust, that maybe can provide a new perspective on what you're writing. And so it's just sometimes the content of an essay can really depend on how you feel comfortable with someone else reading your material. But if you do, it doesn't hurt to have that fresh perspective before you submit something in it. And I think this goes just generally for both graduate and undergraduate essays as well.
Yeah, I have a really easy answer for this. For me, the one thing that stands out as what should you not do is really important is to plagiarize or copy any part of your essay. So it's really easy for students to Google essays to get ideas, and they might even think, when you're reading an essay, you might even think, wow, this sounds just like me. Like I can use this part of the essay as well. And it may be true for you, but it's really important that you write your essay in your own words. And I can say from my program specifically, and a lot of universities across the US, we actually use a program to detect plagiarism. And if we do detect that a lot of your essay has been copied, for example, from the internet, we will deny your application. So I think it's not something to scare you, but that's just very common across US universities, that we want to make sure that your essay is authentic and you're really writing it yourself. And so that is definitely the number one thing to not do when you're writing your essay, is to copy it.
Philip, did you want to add something, or it just?
I was going to mention plagiarism as well, but the other thing you could do, if you're a non-native speaker of English, all right, unless you're applying to an English department for their literature program, many programs aren't going to penalize you for making a few mistakes with punctuation and vocabulary. All right, if you're going to apply to a graduate program in computer science, most of the faculty in my campus are international. Okay, so they all speak English with an accent, and maybe they don't write perfectly. No big deal. So you've got to, but if you're going to go to philosophy, if you're going to do a PhD in liberal arts, you can't be putting an essay together that has any typos or mistakes of that nature, because the competition, there'll be people applying that don't have those mistakes. So you need to proofread, and just based on the discipline you're applying for, ask yourself, how good does the English have to be? Again, one size doesn't fit all, but you want to make yourself, you don't want your language to distract from your message. That's the.
Thank you, Al. So we have the question from Gosha. He asks, do you need to recommend writing in a particular style or form, or just being creative and fair?
For me, we don't recommend any particular format. Just I think to make it as sort of straightforward and easy to understand as possible. A lot of students might write to us in different styles. They might take different approaches to their essay. So the more clearly you can state your message is ideal. But again, that's coming from myself. I work with science and engineering students, so it's sort of a very direct discipline. Again, as Philip was saying, if you're writing, if you're applying to literature, philosophy, some other areas of interest, more creativity in your essay might be appreciated. So I think thinking about the discipline that you're applying to and the best way to get your message across, but there's no specific format. And I think if schools are looking for a very specific writing style, they'll say that in the requirement of the essay for the most part.
I would just add, I'm a long-time French professor, so composition is something I've done a lot of. And in the humanities or liberal arts, if you use a lot of passive voice, it's very, very weak. So passive voice is when you use the verb to be in a past participle, and you say things like, the tree was cut down, all right? Active voice is the person cut the tree down. But if you go to science or psychology or education, and they're, especially if they're using statistics and they're trying to sound scientific, passive voice is very common, all right? So I had to do a bunch of research in the educational psychology field, and I had to accept from my co-writers that passive voice was okay. But in my world of liberal arts, passive voice is very weak. For me, it takes away responsibility for actions, right? So you do have to understand your discipline and what you're doing. And science, they do want shorter sentences and they want facts, all right? And they tolerate more repetition in the conclusion, all right? In anything to do with creative thinking or literature, philosophy, your conclusion's got to really shine, and it can't just be a summary of what you just said. You got to make people understand why they should care about what you just said. So there's certainly not one style or form to use. That's for sure.
Okay, and one more then. Which characteristics or trait do you value the most in a student that can be depicted in the application essay? The question is from Seba.
I think this is a hard thing to pinpoint for me, honestly, because I value many, many things of a student. I think this goes back to being unique. I mean, it's hard to give you a kind of a main thing to focus on because everyone is different. Everyone is going to value different things and going to choose to talk about a different thing. Hopefully, that really characterizes who they are. But I think that really what we see, to give you an idea of some of the prompts that you can find out there in programs, is a lot of it talks about, of course, some, accomplishments in your life or some obstacles that people have faced, but more importantly, how they have overcome things that happen in your life and what lessons you've learned. And you can really learn a lot from a person from those experiences. And so I think that when I'm reading an essay, that is what I'm trying to find is how maybe what makes you you in the way of how you've overcome certain things in your life, or how you've found the motivation or inspiration to pursue what you want to pursue, and why you're passionate about something. So it really will depend on the person. I think it's hard to kind of give certain specific things of what traits we're looking for the most in an application essay. But these are just my my thoughts.
Okay. And here is, does presence of philosophy in the essay benefit it? Very interesting question.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat it?
does the presence of philosophy in the essay benefit it? So philosophy, I mean that in this case, the author meant simply thinking on something, like elaborating on some things, but their philosophical character.
Personally, I would go back to a previous answer from Philip, which is yes, maybe to some extent, but don't let it distract from the message of your essay. So I think understanding how a student thinks and why they think the way they do is very valuable in the admissions process, and understanding sort of their approach to life and their approach to education. But don't talk too much about that, and avoid stating sort of the basic information in your essay, just the fundamental questions of like why you're wanting to join this program and what your goals are in joining this program. So I think a little bit of depth about what motivates you and how you think about the world can really contribute a lot if it's sort of worked into the other message of your essay.
Thanks.
I would just add,
yeah,
just quickly on that. If you're applying as an undergrad and you're younger, right? People like me don't expect you to have a very big philosophy, right? Talk about your experience, be authentic, tell the truth, show that you know yourself. A lot of kids can't write an essay because they don't know themselves. They don't know what they want to study. Dad told them it had to be business. They want to do art. If you don't do all the thinking before you write, it's going to be hard to write the essay. If you try and be someone else because you're worried about what mistake to avoid or what key idea to put in, you're going to have a hard time. And there's nothing you can do about that when you're young sometimes. You got to get the experience. But if you're going to go to grad school and you want to be, your philosophy statement could be a take that you have on the field, or a very powerful, well-connected way of looking at the discipline, because this is how let's say you're older, you've got some experience, you've worked in the field. Well, then you may have a perspective on it. So you don't need to start quoting Socrates to be philosophical. You can just have your own experience and put it that way. But I think it's more important for grad school than it is for undergrad.
Okay. And one more question then. Are there, so what sort of content would weaken the application? The question is from Maria. So she names is just, can you share any kiss of death? What sort of content would weaken the application? In our case, it's essay and statement of purpose. So
I was told at Johns Hopkins by the admissions people that if you apply to Johns Hopkins University and not Johns Hopkins, you're done for. So I think it seems silly, but when you've got way more people applying than you need, and you're choosing amongst equally qualified people that are fantastic, getting the name of the university wrong, boy, forget about it, I would say, at least at the best places. You guys got any?
Yeah, I know Lorenzo mentioned that before too, and same for us. I mean, if you get the university name wrong, it may not be an automatic deny, but it doesn't help your application. So if there are other concerns about your application, and we see that maybe you're not serious about George Washington University because in fact you said you're really excited to go to Georgetown, then we might say like maybe Georgetown's the better fit for you. But the other thing I would share in terms of what weakens your application, I think something that stands out to me is a mismatch or some information in the statement that doesn't really match what I'm seeing in the rest of the application. So if you talk about your amazing performance in your undergraduate program and how much you love everything about computer science, and then I look at your transcript and I see that your computer science grades are quite low, then I'm worried about your self-awareness and what is happening in this application that I'm not understanding. So that would make me question if the student you know, sort of has the right motivation for joining the program. I think just seeing something like that, where there's something about the statement that really confuses me because it doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the candidate's application, that would be something that would weaken their application for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, and I'd also say, on the other end, it would be perhaps lack of elaboration, or lack of answering a specific question being asked, or fully sharing the information that would that is being expected, perhaps for universities that might have, or programs that might have a specific thing that they want you to talk about. I think that it's also, always try to keep that in mind, and try to start the process with some time in advance. Don't try to rush things, or write something that you just kind of thought. Like, give it some time, give it some thinking, and then really build a nice outline, and ensure that you answer everything that's being asked of you. And then, yes, I'll reiterate the, putting the name down of the wrong institution. It does happen. That's why we say it, because it does happen. We do see it. It's not the best, but it kind of shows the perhaps some level of effort that the student might have put in applying to different universities, but how that, how just minor details like that can really affect the way an admissions counselor will review a statement. Also, the tone, I think the tone in which you answer a particular question, or write about a topic, might really affect the way someone reviews it. So yeah.
Thank you. And now one more question then. Can the representatives provide a basic structure of a good essay?
Yes. So I've done, probably for about 10 years now, I've been doing international recruiting, and I get this question all the time. And like every answer that we get, unfortunately, I have to say that this is going to vary by each, university or program that you're applying to, because some might tell you prompts or give you a structure. But when I'm talking to students and I'm sort of coaching them, and they're saying they're having a really difficult time getting started, the prompt that I usually give students is to think about past, present, and future. So that would be the structure that I would start with when I'm trying to organize my thoughts and writing an essay. The past is your background. So where are you coming from? What is your preparation for this program? Have you been successful? Talking about your past, especially your academic past. Your present is, what are you doing right now? So you're applying to this program. So what's happening in your life? What decisions are you making right now? What work are you doing, or anything like that? And the future is just your goals. So why do you want to study at this university? Your goals for your studies and your goals for beyond the university. So once you complete this program, what do you hope to do with it? And that's really helpful for us to understand if our program outcomes match your goals. So if you say you want to come study our certain PhD program because you want to be a lecturer, but our program doesn't really prepare you to be a lecturer, then that would be a concern for us. So we just want to understand what you want to do, so that we're sure it's a good fit. I think just thinking about that easy framework of past, present, future can help you organize your thoughts and kind of decide how you can add value to this program, and how this program can add value to you.
Okay.
And I think that's a really great frame. I'd add two or three things as well. So you organize your experience just like Aaron said, okay? And accept the fact that your writing is a process, so that what I'm going to ask you to do, you might not do until the very end. And that's to start the whole essay with a very striking sentence, something that grabs attention, something that's concise and meaningful, all right? And you won't necessarily have that sentence the first thing. You're not going to start with that sentence. But when you're done editing, that sentence should start the essay. You should talk very briefly about where you're headed, and then have one of those classic thesis statements at some point. A punchline like, This is why I think this university is so good for me, because it meets my past, present, and future goals. All right. Then you just want, in your body of your essay, with your 2 or 3 paragraphs, you want vivid examples that illustrate what you're talking about. An example from your past, an example from your present, all right? And that really shows that you've thought about what you're talking about. And at the very end, you want a punchline. You want a conclusion, a statement that makes everyone go, ah, this is the student for us. So that can't be done on a first draft. The essay must be written, shared, crafted. You got to choose the right words. You don't want to use vague words like, I find physics very interesting, right? That's a word that shouldn't show up. It's a lazy word. You shouldn't use informal language. So Aaron gave you the great framework. And if you remember the principle of being vivid with your language, being concise, right? And just ending with a bang and starting with a bit of brilliant insight or something, or just something that makes you stand out. That's my best advice on crafting an essay.
Thank you. And the final question for today, is the essay a good place to ask for financial support or scholarships?
I would say no, because there are specific places. I mean, well, yeah, I'm trying to think of a scenario where that could happen, but for the most part, I would really try to divide it out. I think, and really make the personal statement. Talk about your, you and your accomplishments and various topics like that. And if you're looking at applying to any scholarships, there will be specific sections or areas in which you can definitely elaborate on that part of things and really talk about those factors or financial need or just different components like that. So I would do my best to really separate those two processes out. So.
Yeah, I agree with Lorenzo as well. And I imagine Philip might have something different to add, because I know he mentioned his essays are for scholarship opportunities. But in our case, I would say that the only time that I think we really value seeing that kind of information in the statement of purpose is just if there is something about your funding situation, I guess, that would make your application unique. So in some cases, some students are coming to us, for example, from a government program or something where they have funding to pursue. And so they might say, I was recently the recipient of a scholarship that will help me, that is to focus on the development of robotics in my country or something like that. And so it's valuable for us to know that's part of your application, that you have this scholarship to achieve these certain goals or something like that. But I think if the point is just to ask for funding or to say that you want to be considered for funding, there's typically some other part of the process where you would say that information, some part of the application where you say, yes, I want to be considered for funding or something like that, that's separate from the statement of purpose, in my case.
And I think what Aaron said is kind of true of all essay writing, be it for scholarships or, unfortunately, in the United States, higher education can be very expensive, right? And universities in general charge people from out of their state more than they do for people who grew up in the state, right? It's called out-of-state tuition. So if you're applying for programs and you can show how you have some funding because you got a government scholarship or private funding, that's what you want to pitch. If you can't make it to the school unless you get funding, you don't need to say that, because that just is a turn off. All right. It makes you less competitive. I've got 22% of my international student body from Africa, including one of the poorest country in the world, Niger. Okay. They don't need to tell me that they need funding to come. They choose my university because we're affordable. But when they apply for the scholarship essay, okay, we know it's important for everybody to get the scholarship. So it's just Aaron gave you some real good advice. We all know that students need financial support to go to school. Most of them do. Some are lucky and their parents are very wealthy. Yeah, okay. But I don't know if you guys, in your case, Aaron, and if a student says something about their family wealth, is that an asset? If they say, my mom and dad, are doing well, and I mean, no. Yeah, okay, so
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to us in the admission process. It doesn't matter because it doesn't support your application.
Yeah, so I think unfortunately you just have to look for those scholarship opportunities. Most university websites have a foundation scholarship page, and if it's a lot of trouble to look through all these scholarships that universities have and see if you're eligible. But what that means is a lot of kids don't apply. All right. So I've got scholarships, for instance, at my university. I give out 50% of the applicants money. That's not very competitive. Well, it takes work to apply for a scholarship. So you shouldn't think that you can't afford it. But you do have to do the research to find the funding source, write the good essay, and not just apply to one opportunity, apply to several.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you. Currently, we are running out of time, and we have way more questions from the audience, but I would like to highlight one more time that you can go to the Education USA platform and ask these questions that haven't been yet answered. So I would like to thank you wholeheartedly for making time today and for presenting and answering all the questions in greater detail. So thank you one more time. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks. Good luck, students.